Thank goodness I can think while Kabir is asleep. He doesn't look like he's having a nightmare today, right? Should I make some plans for the future? Elodie thought as she sat down. I've been staying by Kabir's side every moment. Now I finally have a little time for myself. For now, this is all I can think of. Under the lamplight, she wrote out a list. Plans for the future. Feed and care for Kabir well. Protect the territory until he leaves for war. Prepare for Kabir's return. Research a way to cure terminal illness. Honestly, Elodie did not even want to send Kabir away. But following the Emperor's command, going to war was the duty of the Duke of Serenoa. It was not something he could choose. She had no power to stop the war. Kabir had gone to the battlefield when he was only 13. His body had been so small and thin, yet he was sent off to war. On the battlefield, he suffered endless contempt. But after growing up, he became an outstanding man. He displayed exceptional leadership and earned the trust of the knights. The war had tempered that little boy into a respected young man. Even so, tears welled up in Elodie's eyes. If she had to send him away no matter what, then before that day came, she had to raise him well and make him stronger. Next was the second plan. The Duke's territory was vast and fertile, but had been neglected for a long time. There were very few residents, so productivity was naturally low. Not only that, but in the original story, while researching magical medicine, Elodie had thrown all kinds of failed potions into the lake and forest, ruining this fertile land. But it had not been polluted yet, so there was still hope. She had to research some kind of magical medicine that could make the land even more fertile. I should write that down. Lastly, she absolutely had to research a way to cure terminal illness, because in the end, Elodie had contracted a terminal illness that stiffened the body. For a villain's ending, it was rather miserable. But the current Elodie had no intention of dying like that. No matter what, she would live a long life, stay healthy, and remain in excellent condition. As she was thinking in the early morning study, the butler brought Elodie the territorial financial records she had requested. She reviewed them with complete concentration. Her father, Count McClare, was a complete fool and a greedy man. When he sent Elodie into the Duke's household, she had worried he might try to harm her. In truth, the reason he chose Elodie was because he had no other option. No one was willing to send their precious daughter to the side of an illegitimate son from a poor duchy. The former Duke and Duchess had been extravagantly wasteful and hopelessly addicted to alcohol. Not only that, they had become complete drunkards and utterly neglected the territory. In the end, both of them died of heart attacks brought on by excessive drinking. If the butler and the others had failed to make the current lord the heir, then this territory would have fallen into the hands of Count Barone, the former Duke's younger brother. He did not want to see the Serenoa Duchy, to which he had devoted his entire life, fall into the hands of that wicked Count Barone. So they desperately searched for the child the former Duke had with a maid. Unexpectedly, they found him in an orphanage. But no matter how the young lord had been treated there, one thing was certain. He had developed a deep fear of adults and was completely unable to adapt to his new surroundings. That was why the butler had hoped he could marry someone who would care for him like an older sister. After the palace formally recognized the young lord's right of inheritance, they worked hard to prepare a dowry for the marriage. But because the duchy's circumstances were well known to everyone, it was difficult to find a suitable marriage partner. Only Count McClare had shamelessly sold off his daughter. He had even personally written a contract stating that he would have nothing more to do with her afterward. He must have been deeply hurt by his father's actions, and yet he remained so calm. Norman's eyes shone as he looked at Elodie, who was reading the records with composed ease. I, Norman, will serve my madam for the rest of my life. The butler Norman could not help thinking, so as he looked at the records in his hands. Kabir's family had once been a powerful and prestigious duchy. The first Duke of the Serenoa Empire had been a war hero. He had personally conquered vast lands. The former Duke, Kabir's father, had neglected the territory's administration for a long time, so the duchy was now facing financial hardship. Somewhere in the castle, the former Duke had hidden gold coins and jewels. In the original story, Elodie found these treasures and squandered them all. If she could find them this time, she could solve the urgent financial crisis. Norman, Elodie gave him an instruction. Please find a swordsmanship teacher for Kabir from the Knight Order. If he is going to lead the Knight Order in the future, he has to start learning from a young age. Understood. I will report to you as soon as I find one. Norman turned to carry out the task, his heart faintly stirred. Lord Kabir's grandfather. I can finally face the late Duke now. Kabir, no more sweets. Elodie stopped Kabir, who was happily eating. All right, he obediently put them down. Instead, guilt rose in Elodie's heart. She wanted to buy him all he wanted, but eating too many sweets was bad for his health. Elodie's heart ached right now. Now let's go play. How about hide and seek? Okay, children should be running and playing after all. Kabir, you be the one to catch me. All right, Elodie, you have to call me madam. Elodie taught him, yes, until the day you bring back a princess. I am still your madam. Never mind the details. I'm your madam anyway. So you have to call me that, understand? Yes, madam. Very good. Now, count to 10, then come catch me. Aye, Elodie said as she turned around to hide. 1, 9. He began counting. Madam, something feels off, Elodie thought. She turned her head and saw that Kabir had already started early. Got you. Kabir smiled brightly. You cheated. Hee hee. Elodie could only smile indulgently. I like my madam. I hope she never leaves. She is a kind and gentle madam. I absolutely cannot let her leave, Kabir thought. Please, starting today, teach the young Duke well, Mr. Beatos. Beatos accepted the request. But is that timid little brat really the Duke? He looked rather doubtful. Obviously, that was exactly what he was thinking. I know someone asked me for help, but that timid child is the Duke? See, that really was what he thought. Elodie could clearly tell what was on his mind. She felt she had to make things clear. Kabir is afraid of adults because he was abused in the orphanage. He is still a child now, but in the future, he will lead the Night Order. Sir Beatos, please take good care of him. I will do my best. Beatos said no more, but inwardly he thought, at such a young age, she already carries herself like an adult. That man is a good person, just like Uncle Butler. I'll stay by your side, so don't worry, Elodie said to Kabir. Will you always stay with me? Of course. I'll always be here. You can see me, right? While the two were talking, Beatos shook his head. A kind person. What kind of saint is this? During training, Elodie read books on magic pills that a maid had brought from the library. She was surprised to discover that she could understand the contents with ease. Perhaps thanks to her natural intelligence. She closed her eyes and organized the steps and ingredients needed to make magic pills, fully aware of how crucial the amount and quality of magical power infused into them would be. Though she possessed the ability to control earth element and ceiling-type magic, as a villain fated for a tragic end, she regarded it as a useful gain. At present, the greatest problem was the shortage of materials. Even if she could use magic to produce seeds, she still had no place to grow them. She hoped the estate had a greenhouse, but the greenhouse there had long gone unused, and repairing or expanding it would require a large sum of money. Helpless, she decided to first use the money saved in Kabir's treasury, thinking she would repay it later by selling medicine. As she thought, Elodie's gaze returned to Kabir's small figure. In the book, Kabir's swordsmanship had been unmatched and he had swept through the battlefield invincibly. But the child before her was utterly different from that heroic image in the novel. Thinking about how quickly he had been forced to grow up, tears slipped from Elodie's eyes again. At the same time, doubts rose in her heart about his training. This was Kabir's first swordsmanship lesson. He should have started with basics, such as stance and how to hold a sword. Yet the instructor had him spar directly. Kabir had just started learning and could not keep up. He was defeated again and again, left to climb back up on his own. Tears filled Kabir's eyes as he slowly stood. Beatos was extremely strict and cold. Even after Kabir fell over and over, he only watched with indifference and told him to get up and continue. The sight made Elodie's heart ache so badly that she clenched her fists to stop herself from rushing over. Brian ignored Elodie's angry glare and continued teaching harshly. As the training went on, Kabir's emotions neared collapse and quiet sobs escaped him. Brian's dissatisfied scolding completely enraged Elodie. She jumped to her feet and sharply rebuked him. Only then did Brian look at her, and the calmness she had shown earlier was long gone from Elodie's face. She questioned Brian, knowing full well that Kabir feared adults. Why are you still threatening him like this? This kind of behavior is deeply harmful to a traumatized child. Brian argued that he had not actually struck him, but Elodie pointed out that threatening him was no different. She ordered him to teach Kabir carefully until he had time to adapt. When she saw the scrape on Kabir's knee, Elodie could not care about anything else. She rushed over, picked Kabir up, and he instinctively wrapped his arms around her neck. Something in Elodie's heart trembled, and her eyes grew wet once more. Just then, rain began to fall. Using the weather as her reason, Elodie ended the lesson and carried Kabir back to the castle, leaving Brian standing there in a daze. Beatos was deeply puzzled by this request. He had always believed in strict training, and this was the first time he had ever been scolded by a young girl. Still, Elodie's words made him realize that because of Kabir's past trauma, he truly did need a gentler method of instruction. Although Kabir seemed timid, Brian had discovered his potential during training. Under fear, Kabir instinctively sought out his opponent's weaknesses, like a fierce beast not yet awakened. This made Betos look forward to his future training. After returning to the castle, Elodie took Kabir to a bathroom prepared with warm water and bathed him herself. Kabir was so thin that he looked like a child of 4 or 5. While bathing him, Elodie discovered that his back was covered in scars. Thinking of what the orphanage director had done, a vengeful fury rose in her heart. "Kabir, does your hand hurt?" "It hurts." Elodie noticed that even when he cried, he made no sound. It was too heartbreaking. "Perhaps." Holding his hand, Elodie asked, "Kabir, did the adults at the orphanage scold you if you cried out loud?" Kabir admitted that he was afraid and even spoke of how he had been beaten. Kabir let out a small laugh. But in Elodie's heart, she had already made up her mind to personally punish those who had hurt him. Kabir was still worried, afraid that Elodie would end up in danger because she was protecting him. Elodie held his hand and comforted him, promising that the instructor would not hurt him again. Elodie deliberately acted tough, punching a pillow to show how strong she was. "Let's make a promise. You can cry whenever you want. If you keep holding it in, you'll get sick. Crying out loud will make you feel much better." "I'll listen to Madam," Kabir said with a smile. That was their promise. "All right, now let's treat your wounds. You know, those adults who bullied you are nothing at all. They have nothing to do with you anymore. You don't need to be afraid now. I'll scold them for you. I'll deal with them for you. Do you remember what they looked like? Try your best to think back and describe them to me." In her heart, she had already decided to personally punish the people who had harmed Kabir. Elodie took out paper and pen and asked Kabir to describe what his abusers looked like. Though he was afraid, under her encouragement, he slowly began to tell her. As Elodie listened, she sketched. Though her drawing was clumsy, it still outlined their rough features, and the fire of vengeance in her heart burned even stronger. After drinking soup, the two chatted in front of the fireplace and eventually fell fast asleep. The warm fire and soft sound of rain seemed to weave a dream where they could finally feel safe. Before long, a maid came in to clear away the dishes. Seeing the two of them asleep, she smiled, carried Kabir to the bed, and tucked him in. As she moved around, she noticed the sheet of paper beside them, mistook it for a cute drawing, and even showed it to the other maids. Little did they know that these sketches were Elodie's list of revenge, carrying her firm resolve to seek justice for Kabir. Elodie's steady way of handling matters filled Norman with hope. At that moment, he was full of expectation, sensing that the Sernoa family would rise to prosperity once more. Unexpectedly, Norman's premonition came true very quickly. A few days later, Elodie told Norman that she had found the hidden vault the Duke had concealed and invited him to inspect it with her. Norman followed behind her with his mouth hanging open in shock. The sight inside the vault was astonishing. Thousands upon thousands of gold bars, gold coins, and jewels were displayed there. Anyone who saw it would be captivated. This wealth was not enough to support everyone in leisure for the rest of their lives, but it was more than enough to secure the necessities for the coming year. On top of one chest lay a letter written by Kabir's grandfather to the former Duke. Perhaps he had hoped that after his death, his son would discover this vault. When Norman read it, tears of emotion filled his eyes, and his heart was full of gratitude. Elodie, meanwhile, began thinking about how to use this fortune. She knew full well that the Sernoa family was at a low point. If they wanted to restore their former glory, the outside world had to know that the family was not to be underestimated. Using this money properly and creating positive rumors would be crucial. The first thing she thought of was spending the money on Kabir. After receiving Norman's confirmation, she decided to recruit more knights and strengthen the estate's defenses. She understood that after the former Duke's death, the knights had lacked proper training. If she wanted to ensure Kabir would have no worries on the battlefield in the future, building an elite force was essential. Moreover, strengthening the knights would also protect the family from other nobles who might look down on the young Kabir and plot against the house. "Understood, Madam," Norman said. He accepted it without even asking why. Elodie was a little speechless. No matter what, the strength of the Knight Order had to be improved quickly. Elodie already had someone in mind for the position of commander of the Knight Order. When she extended the invitation to Betos, he looked stunned. Betos tried to decline, saying he was too busy teaching Kabir and had no ability to train the entire order. Elodie struck straight at the heart, pointing out that he had neither wife nor children, nor even a lover. "Sir, you don't even have a wife or children. What exactly are you pretending to be busy with?" Betos felt rather stabbed by that. "And you don't even have a sweetheart either, sir. So for Kabir's sake, please strengthen the Knight Order. You don't need to worry about the money." Betos felt especially wounded, but in the end he agreed. Elodie was deeply pleased, thinking this was exactly the right use of his talents. After finishing that matter, Elodie returned to the castle to fulfill another of her duties, reading to Kabir during afternoon tea. She knew very well how important reading and storytelling were to a child's growth. They could promote brain development and stimulate the imagination. Kabir daydreamed, "That sounds so cool. Madam, can we live in a candy house too?" "No, you can't. A candy house would attract a whole army of ants. Sorry to shatter your childhood fantasy, but ants really are troublesome. Maybe because he had rarely eaten sweets in the orphanage, he especially loved desserts. His intake had to be controlled so he could grow up healthy." "Kabir, can you stand up?" Elodie said, "I feel like you've gotten a little taller. People always say children grow quickly." She could not help thinking as Kabir came over. She pulled him closer. "We'll mark your height here every year. When you become an adult, Kabir, you'll be taller than me." "Really?" Kabir asked. Elodie gave him an affirmative answer. In the original novel, Kabir was described as a tall and very handsome man. Elodie was already starting to feel proud. "What is it, madam?" "Nothing. It's just that you're too cute." "Am I cute?" "Yes, Kabir. You're the cutest in the world." Kabir thought for a moment and said, "When I grow tall like an adult, I'll hug you too." "Madam, hurry up and grow big and strong, my baby," Elodie said fondly. In the end, the arms of the grown Kabir would embrace a princess. But because of the affection that came from raising him, at least he had hugged me once too. After Kabir left for war, sadly, for the next 10 years, I would have no way to record his growth. The thought of not seeing Kabir for such a long time made me sad. I want to watch him grow all the way into adulthood. I also want to see what Kabir looks like when he falls in love. How adorable would that be? But before that, I should seriously keep records. I want to create more memories for him, no matter how small, Elodie thought. A few days later, the butler Norman brought up birthdays with Elodie. Elodie's initial cold response made Norman somewhat hesitant. He guessed that perhaps she had unpleasant memories associated with birthdays. Thinking of Elodie's greedy and violent father, Count McClare, Norman felt both anger and helplessness. He could hardly imagine what Elodie's previous birthdays had been like. Most likely, the Count had never once thrown her a proper birthday party. It turned out Kabir's birthday was approaching. Earlier, while inquiring into information about Kabir's mother, Norman had learned that one maid was actually Kabir's biological mother. The letter only recorded Kabir's name and date of birth. From then on, Norman carefully kept track of the young lord's birthday. As Kabir gradually stopped being afraid of adults, Norman also discovered that Kabir's birthday was only 2 days apart from Elodie's. So he wanted to suggest celebrating both of their birthdays together. Just as Norman thought he had been inconsiderate and was about to apologize, Elodie suddenly agreed gladly and even said that she liked birthday parties and was willing to celebrate with Kabir. Norman was relieved and immediately began preparing. Sitting in her room, Elodie recalled Norman's words and unintentionally remembered one of the original Elodie's memories. That memory about birthdays was vague, like an old, torn piece of paper. In her original family, her father had many children and cared nothing for any of them. Though Elodie had been born a noble, she had never felt the warmth or love of a family. There had been no sibling affection either. She only remembered that there was an older brother who had once celebrated her birthday for her. And before reincarnating, when she had lived as Gua, she had not even known her exact birthday. Her life had been lonely, and she had never had a proper birthday party. Thinking of this, Elodie realized that this was very likely the first birthday party of both her lives, and her heart filled with anticipation and excitement. Elodie realized that this was very likely the first birthday party she had ever had across both lifetimes, and she could not help feeling thrilled and eager. While Kabir was learning the alphabet nearby, he curiously asked what a birthday was. Elodie patiently explained that a birthday was the day he came into this world. On that day, not only could he receive many gifts, he could also eat delicious food and enjoy all kinds of snacks to his heart's content. Hearing this, Kabir clapped happily. Elodie knew that since he had grown up in an orphanage, he had probably never experienced anything like that. So she began thinking about what birthday gift she should give him. Elodie was skilled in ancient language, and out of curiosity, she taught Kabir some of it. Considering that he would later become a swordsmanship master, it seemed only natural. A sword master could condense magical power into an aura, and for people born with a high affinity for magic, learning ancient language was easier. So Kabir's magical affinity must be very high. If he learned ancient language well now, perhaps it would be of great help in the future. During the lesson, Elodie pointed out mistakes in Kabir's homework, and the way he pouted looked unbearably cute in her eyes. She patted Kabir's head and patiently explained things. When she saw him write the answer correctly, she praised him without holding back, and Kabir's unhappy expression disappeared instantly. Soon, the day of the birthday celebration arrived. Kabir saw an enormous cake. "Young Lord and Madam, happy birthday." Everyone celebrated together. "Madam, do you like the birthday gift we gave you?" "I do. I really do." Elodie was deeply moved. "This dress is so beautiful. Thank you all. I'm happy you like it. It suits you very well. Now the two of you should exchange gifts." "Kabir, this is the gift I prepared for you. I made it myself, so it's a little rough. Will you like it? I love it so much. It was a stuffed bear." A handmade gift carries one-of-a-kind feelings. "Now, young lord, it's time for you to give Madam the gift you prepared too, right?" Kabir prepared a gift for me too?" "Thank you, Kabir. I love you." "Thank you." The gift was a card with those words written on it. Time flew by. 1 year later, I turned 14 and Kabir turned 8. "Perhaps we should hire more servants for the castle. Norman, please take charge of that." Elodie arranged it so. Over the past year, Sir Betos had managed the knights very well. Thanks to him, even squires had joined. So in order to help the servants who were overwhelmed with preparing meals for the knights, we decided to recruit new staff. A few days earlier, Kabir had stood before the knights for the first time in his exalted role as lord. It was an investiture ceremony officially appointing squires as knights. Elodie held the hand of the visibly nervous Kabir. Though he was extremely tense, he continued to draw courage and warmth from Elodie's hand, and completed the ceremony solemnly. "Madam, the repair workers will arrive tomorrow. How long will the repairs take? There are not many places that need fixing, so it shouldn't take too long. We plan to use some of the remaining gold coins to repair the greenhouse. I also want to build a laboratory next to it," she arranged confidently. "Oh, right. Today I'm planning to go to the market with Kabir." "Yes, I heard. Minghui and Mary will go as well, together with Sir Betos." Because of this, Kabir would be leaving the estate for the first time with Elodie, and he was a little reluctant to go. He even gave Elodie a pitiful look. Though Elodie felt bad for him, she still insisted on going, because the herbs currently available on the estate were not enough, and she still needed samples from other regions. Though Kabir was unwilling, because he depended so much on Elodie, he still went with her. "He really hates being separated from me. This seems like separation anxiety. If he insists on following me, even onto the battlefield like this, what will we do? That'd be a real problem." Elodie felt a little worried. The market was far livelier than Elodie had imagined. Shops and stalls were packed tightly together. The aroma of all kinds of spices filled the air. People bustled busily through the market. Some stood excitedly in front of stalls, some couples strolled hand in hand, and some housewives haggled over prices. Seeing the lively scene and the joyful expressions on people's faces, Elodie guessed it might be because taxes had been reduced by half, easing the burden on the residents. Holding Kabir's hand, she continued looking around the market. Brian reminded Elodie to be careful because there were many people. Elodie thanked him. Just then, an eager shout interrupted her thoughts. "Look over there, madam." Her gaze followed toward the thing that had attracted everyone's attention. A caravan from a foreign land. Its members wore exquisite clothing. Their brightly patterned garments gleamed under the sunlight, and their vivid colors were no less dazzling than a beautiful garden. This caravan instantly drew everyone's attention, and their brilliant attire became a unique sight along the street. However, the local merchants looked displeased. The arrival of foreign traders had stolen away their customers. People all around began discussing it. Some recognized this as the famous merchant caravan, Lundia. They had heard that it sold the finest goods on the entire continent and guessed that it was passing through here on its way to the capital. As they spoke, a strong perfume with a musky scent spread through the air. Brian's expression immediately turned serious, while a rosy flush bloomed on Mary's pale, freckled face. That familiar perfume made Elodie think of a scene from a novel. In the story, the heroine had accidentally used a special perfume from the East. It was not an ordinary perfume, but one meant to seduce the opposite sex. Because she mistakenly used that perfume, the heroine had fallen into danger and was ultimately saved by the male lead. While the two were hiding, they even shared their first kiss. Elodie glanced at Kabir, who was tightly holding her hand, and thought, "My baby is going to kiss someone one day." Kabir sensed that something was off about her and innocently asked what was wrong. Elodie merely shook her head. Meanwhile, Beatos and Mary had both gone red in the face and were awkwardly coughing to hide their embarrassment. At that moment, she noticed the market was becoming more and more crowded, so she told Beatos to keep an eye on Kabir. But suddenly, an accident happened. A group of people rushed toward a merchant selling cheap goods, and the street instantly became packed and chaotic. In the confusion, someone bumped into Elodie. Elodie was pushed apart by the crowd, and by the time she squeezed free, Kabir was nowhere to be seen. She had accidentally let go of Kabir's hand. Then, amid the panic, the two of them were separated. She anxiously searched through the crowd, her eyes growing more and more frantic. She spotted Mr. Beatos by a corner of the road and hurriedly told him that she had become separated from Kabir. Then she loudly called Kabir's name, drawing the attention of the people around them. In the middle of her panic, a faint light coming through the gap of an alley caught her eye. In the shadow, she saw a small figure. It was Kabir, but two boys had him surrounded. They looked about the same age as Kabir, but they were taller. Kabir had been driven into a corner. The two boys looked at Kabir. "You're Kabir, right? Looks like some rich family adopted you. Some of us can only survive by stealing, but you're dressed all nice, eating well, and living comfortably. Hand over everything you've got on you, even the clothes you're wearing. Take them all off." Greed had risen in them, and they wanted to steal even his clothes. From the corner, he suddenly saw Elodie. He called to his dependable madam for help. When the two boys heard Kabir call Elodie madam, they burst into laughter. "Madam, are you serious? Aren't you only 7? No, wait, you're 8 now, right? Is this just some kind of playing house? Kabir, come here." Elodie really had come to save him. Kabir looked at her, and Elodie quickly strode forward. The moment Kabir saw her, he ran over in tears and hugged her tightly. "What is wrong with you two? How do you know our Kabir?" The freckled boy answered rudely. "We came from the same orphanage as that little punk. That coward actually hides behind a woman's skirt. If he keeps being so scared, he's gonna wet himself." "Hey!" Elodie's voice turned icy. "Shut your mouth." She looked like a furious tiger. "WH, what did you say? Who do you think you are, you little brat?" "Mr. Beatos, we found Madam and the young master." "Madam, are you all right?" "Ah, you can't just raise your hand and hit people like that. Do you hear me?" Elodie directly seized him. "Let go of me." The freckled boy struggled. What are you doing?" Mr. Beatos had arrived. Just then, Beatos and Madam reunited. The two boys saw the sword at Beatos' waist. Their expressions fell, and at last they fled in terror. Elodie regretted not giving them a proper lesson. Just then, she noticed that the freckled boy had dropped a brooch. Brian picked up the brooch and guessed that it might be a magical item containing ancient magic. Elodie looked at the brooch flashing with a strange light. It was her first time seeing such an object. Just then, footsteps sounded from beyond the cement wall, and a magnificently dressed man came around the corner. His skin was dark, his build tall, yet his face was full of despair and anxiety. Sweat rolled down him without stopping, and he was gasping for breath. After finally catching his breath, he anxiously asked, "Excuse me, have you seen two little boys about this tall?" Beatos and Elodie exchanged a glance. Beatos asked, "Sir, were you robbed?" The man raised his brows in surprise and said loudly, "That's right. Did they rob you too?" "Those thieving scoundrels, damn them. What is wrong with this place?" Elodie asked him with a troubled expression what he had lost. With sorrow on his face, the man said, "It was my mother's keepsake. There's a gemstone in the center of the brooch. It's very precious to me." Elodie raised a magical brooch they had picked up, and the man quickly snatched it, crying with joy. "This is it, my mother's brooch." "Oh, thank goodness." That sudden outburst of emotion plunged everyone into awkward silence, and they all looked at each other, unsure what to do. Even Kabir found it a little awkward. "This brooch is my mother's keepsake. You've done me a huge favor. Allow me to properly introduce myself. I am Herka, head of the Lundia Trading Company." Head of the Lundia Trading Company. Elodie immediately began making calculations in her mind. "Sir, you personally said that we are your benefactors, correct?" "Of course. You found the precious keepsake my late mother left me. I really ought to give you some kind of gift." "No need for a gift. Could I trouble you to make a quick visit to the castle of the Sernoa territory? This child here is the lord of the Sernoa territory. Before you leave these lands, please be sure to visit the castle." The great problem that had been troubling us all this time now had a solution. Because of this accident, the memories buried deep in Kabir's heart. The ones left by the hurt he suffered in the orphanage surfaced once more. The vicious curses once hurled by the adults there echoed again. There's a reason you were abandoned. Useless thing. You're trash no one wants. Those words pierced deeply into his heart. Although Elodie gave him love and care, those painful memories were still hard to erase. They had carved deep wounds into his heart. He was terrified of being abandoned again, yet Elodie's presence also brought him peace. Kabir's heart was full of unease and self-blame as he struggled to stop the tears from spilling from his eyes. He worried that perhaps he relied on Elodie too much. Every day, all he did was cry and ask for her help, becoming a burden. He felt he was not worthy of being loved, yet he could not resist Elodie's kindness, her warm embrace, and the love in her gentle voice. He knew this happiness could not last forever. He was deeply terrified of being abandoned, to the point that he would rather suffer abuse again than endure the pain of being cast aside. That fear had already become a nightmare that kept him from sleeping. He tossed and turned as bitter tears slid down his cheeks. Fear surrounded him like a starving beast, especially the fear of losing the person before him who loved him most. Thunder roared, and Kabir suddenly opened his eyes. He was drenched in sweat, his heart pounding violently from the surge of adrenaline. For a moment, he could not tell whether this was a dream or reality. After a while, he finally realized where he was. Slowly sitting up, he called out, "Madam." But when he looked around, he did not see Elodie anywhere, and disappointment filled his heart. He got out of bed and wiped the tears from his face. Just as he was about to go look for Elodie, he heard her voice from beside the bed. "Kabir, you're awake. Did you have another nightmare?" Elodie opened her arms to him. After hesitating for a moment, Kabir ran to her and was gently gathered into her embrace, feeling that real warmth. Kabir could no longer hold back his tears. Even as he thought, "I shouldn't trouble her," the nightmare-like voice echoed in his mind. "You'll always be abandoned." It frightened him so badly that sometimes he even wondered whether it would have been better if he had never met Elodie. But he could not bear to let go of these feelings. Kabir buried his face in Elodie's shoulder. Elodie gently patted his back and said softly, "You can cry. Cry all you want until you feel a little better." After saying that, she sighed and held him even tighter. Kabir was puzzled. "Why is she so good to me? I'm just a useless child." Thinking back to when he had first become Duke, he had feared every adult, convinced they would beat him just like the people in the orphanage had. Until one day, Elodie had appeared before him with a smile. Unlike the butler, who had constantly tried talking to him and getting close to him, Elodie had merely sat down in front of him, where he was curled up in the corner of the room. She had simply looked at him intently. After a moment of silence, Kabir tilted his head curiously toward Elodie, and the two stared at each other. Elodie's dazzling pink hair, bright as jewel fragments, fell smoothly around her, with soft curls at the ends. Her teal eyes were like emeralds dissolved into the sea. With a faint smile, she asked him if he wanted to hear a story. Even though Kabir did not answer, Elodie still brought over a book and began to read. Kabir had been deeply moved. Elodie's kindness, her warmth and care, her hugs and words of comfort, had made this child who longed to be loved open his heart to someone for the first time. Elodie became the cure for his loneliness. Elodie wiped the tears from Kabir's cheeks and suggested, "Shall we go back to sleep? I'll put on a little shadow play for you." Kabir curiously asked what that was. Elodie told him to wait a moment, then turned off the lamp, lit a candle, sat beside him, and used her hands to make all kinds of shadows: a dog, a butterfly, a rabbit, a bird, an owl, and a swan. Kabir was amazed, and a broad smile spread across his face. He was no longer afraid. On that rainy night, Kabir fell asleep in Elodie's arms, and the pain of his nightmares disappeared with it. There was even a faint smile on his face. "Why is she so kind? I'm such a useless child, even from the very first day we met." "Hello, you must be Kabir." She had been kind from the very beginning. "I don't want to be separated from her." And so, the next day, the two of them both overslept. "Madam, why do you look so down?" "Nothing." Elodie happened to be visiting the maids and chatting with them. Kabir was there too. "I still haven't made any progress. I don't even know what kind of medicine I should make. That person will be arriving soon, but I can't think of anything at all." Seeing that Tessie looked unwell, someone asked, "Tessie, you don't look too good either. Are you sick?" Tessie replied, "It's nothing. My stomach just hurts." Mary guessed, "Is it that time of the month?" The other maids looked at Tessie sympathetically. Mary suggested, "If it hurts badly, you should go rest. Usually, if I put something warm on my stomach, I feel a little better." Another maid agreed and said she did the same. Anna then asked, "Do you want me to pick some spirit grass for you?" Tessie refused, saying she did not like the smell very much. Elodie became curious about their conversation, so she asked, "What is spirit grass? Is it some kind of herb?" Elodie urgently asked, "Where's that grass? Take me there and show me right now." Though Anna was a little confused, she still went to the garden with her. When they reached the garden, Elodie asked Anna, "Is this spirit grass?" Anna answered, "That's just a weed." Only then did Elodie realize it looked exactly like ordinary weeds. Anna went on to say that she often mixed them up too. At first, no one used it. Even in the town where I lived, the only person who used this grass for pain relief was my grandfather. Elodie stared at the grass in confusion. Anna put some in her mouth, chewed it, and swallowed it. Her face immediately twisted up, which was how she confirmed that this was indeed spirit grass. If you can tell apart by the taste, shouldn't you just take one bite rather than swallowing it whole? Out of curiosity, Elodie also picked up a blade of grass and chewed it without thinking. Seeing this, Anna warned, "Madam, you're eating too much." But the moment Elodie chewed the grass, her legs suddenly went weak. She cried out in pain, "Madam, are you all right? Even for a medicinal herb, it's far too bitter. Still, it really is easy to find." Yes, it took me a long time to get used to it too. Most people would rather see a doctor than use this. But medicine prescribed by doctors is quite expensive, and not many people know about this plant. It's the first time I've heard of it too. The bitter taste still lingered in her mouth. But why is it called spirit grass? Actually, that isn't its formal name. My grandfather used to call it that. He said it was a painkiller even poor people like us could find in the wild. So he called it a gift from the spirits. Judging by the taste, demon grass would suit it better. But madam, are you really going to make magical medicine? That's right. Good heavens. Our madam really is a mage. Mages are extremely rare. In this world, magic was a remnant of ancient nature worship, passed down from generation to generation. In the distant past, there had been a legendary great mage born from nature who ruled over all spirits. He taught magic to humankind. His disciples recorded his teachings in ancient texts so they could be preserved for future generations. However, the temples, which believed only in holy magic, opposed mages. In the end, they monopolized most of the ancient texts and listed them as forbidden books. As a result, the number and power of mages could never truly flourish. Because mages are so few, only the rich can enjoy the benefits of magic, just as nobles can receive treatment at any time. Commoners need magical medicine even more, but their best option is usually to get herbs from a village doctor and brew them into tea. If they fall gravely ill or are seriously injured, they might try to see a priest even if they cannot afford it. If I can make a good painkiller from materials that are easy to find, it could really help a lot of people. If I manage to make this medicine, then when Kabir goes to the battlefield in the future, it may be useful there too. Now the greenhouse and laboratory were finally completed. Whether this project would succeed now depended entirely on me. The next day, Elodie took Kabir, Anna, and Mary to gather more spirit grass. As her research into spirit grass progressed, 1 week later the greenhouse and laboratory were finished, and she finally completed a bottle of magical medicine. Whether it succeeded or failed depended on the timing, method, and amount of magical power infused into it. So the process of making it was extremely difficult. Even so, it was precisely because I possessed this ability that I succeeded now. The pain-relieving effect improved early on, but I spent a lot of effort removing the bitterness. Now it truly is a perfect painkiller. By continuously infusing it with a small amount of magic, the bitterness was reduced, and I also turned it into pills so it would be easier to take and distribute. Most medicines on the market come in liquid form, so these pills will seem much more convenient. I gave myself a small test wound and took this medicine. As a result, I could not feel any pain at all. I really want someone else to try it as soon as possible. Is anyone injured or in pain? Oh, Tessie, didn't you say earlier that you weren't feeling well? So who should I have test this painkiller? Madam, if it's a painkiller, why not go see the Knights? Yes, madam. We thought you weren't coming today. Elodie took Kabir to the Knights. This place is too dirty. Clean it up immediately. Do you know how expensive this training ground is? Every day, all of you should be taking proper care of your equipment. She kept nagging and nagging. Looks like she's doing that again today. By the way, is anyone here injured? So you didn't come just to lecture us. The Knights sighed in relief. Then a greeting sounded from the distance. It was Lady Sora. Our little madam, you're as cute as ever. She always treated me like a little sister. Lady Sora, are you hurt anywhere? Oh no, I'm not. During training earlier, Rain got beaten up pretty badly. True enough, I'm probably the only man who keeps getting beaten by his own lover. Then he's definitely the one who should try this. This is a magical medicine I made. Is it a healing medicine? Not exactly, but it does relieve pain. This isn't poison or something, is it? Why would I give you something like that? Sora urged Rain from the side to take the medicine. Rain was nearly driven to tears by Sora's pressure. Lady Sora, Elodie said, "All right, madam, stop resisting and take it obediently." Sora started forcing it on him. In the end, under Sora's pressure, Rain reluctantly took the pill. He only chewed a little of it, while Elodie waited with a face full of expectation to see the result. After a while, the medicine took effect, and Rain was shocked to discover that his wound no longer hurt. In disbelief, he tested it again and again, even striking the wound. Elodie quickly reminded him that the medicine only stopped pain, that the effect lasted about 24 hours, and that overdoing it would worsen the injury. Sora praised Elodie's achievement endlessly, calling her a genius, and even joking that she should give him kisses and hugs as a reward. Elodie could only sigh helplessly. Witnessing all this, Brian revealed a satisfied smile. He had never been someone who easily took a liking to others, nor was he often moved by anyone. But in his eyes, Elodie was different. When others first met Elodie, they only thought she was a clever child. Yet Brian knew very well that she was far more than she appeared. She was diligent and hardworking, persistent and unwavering. She never stopped learning, devoting herself wholeheartedly to studying specialized knowledge and burying herself in books. Her determination and intelligence filled Brian with admiration, and he was proud of everything she had achieved. Elodie asked Kabir whether he was proud of her. Kabir, who had been holding her hand the whole time, finally smiled. His eyes were no longer vacant. At last, the long-awaited day arrived. The chef prepared special dishes, and the dining table was covered with delicious food. Herka, the head of the Lundia Trading Company, came to visit. He said that he had originally come to repay a favor, yet had instead been treated with such warm hospitality, for which he was deeply grateful. Elodie smiled, finished her tea, and went straight to the point. She asked Herka whether he would be willing to help her. At first, Herka did not think much of it, assuming the young girl's request could not be anything difficult. Elodie proposed supplying goods to Lundia. Herka was greatly surprised when he heard that. Then Elodie took out a small pill. At first, Herka mistook it for a dessert. When he learned that it was a painkiller made with magic, he was even more shocked. "I'm very confident in its effectiveness. Would you like to try it?" Elodie said. When she took out the small pill, Herka first assumed it was some kind of sweet, but when he learned it was a painkiller made through magic, he was stunned. Because medicine was usually in liquid potion form, he had never seen a magic pill before. He suggested testing it, and Elodie proposed testing it on him personally. Herka agreed. During the process, Herka acted extremely timid. He only dared let a soldier make a tiny cut on his little finger. Even so, he cried out loudly and exaggerated his pain. Elodie handed the pill to Herka, and after the medicine took effect, Herka's eyes lit up. His expression reminded Elodie of the butler Norman. Every time Norman looked at her, his eyes were also full of trust. It made Elodie wonder how some people could trust others so easily. Herka was full of admiration that Elodie had become a mage at such a young age and possessed such an extraordinary memory. Elodie took the chance to ask whether they had a deal. Herka said the item would be extremely valuable and could be sold at a high price. But Elodie hoped to sell it cheaply to commoners and to farmers as well. Herka expressed concern that if supply was insufficient, the price would naturally rise. Elodie told him not to worry, because she had invented automated equipment that could easily mass-produce the pills. The only drawback was that the machine was rather noisy when running. In the end, Herka agreed to cooperate. Elodie also mentioned that she planned to make the pills smaller in the future, so they would be easier to carry. Herka agreed that it was a good idea. He also said that after finishing his business in the capital, he would visit again. "Before you leave, how much contract money can you pay?" Elodie did not beat around the bush. She directly asked Herka how much advance payment he was willing to offer, saying that other merchant guilds would also be visiting and that she would decide based on the size of the advance. At that moment, the relationship between the two seemed to shift subtly. At first, Herka had looked down on this young girl. He had no idea he would soon take that thought back. Herka swallowed hard. With such astonishing results, turning down this proposal would make him a fool. "Very well, I accept this deal," Herka said. Elodie smiled and took out a contract. "Once the contract is signed, you'll need to pay the advance for the first shipment." Herka examined the contract, his nervous eyes drifting toward Elodie from time to time. He would have to pay a large sum, but fortunately the cost of each pill was relatively low. The amount was still within what he could bear. If you sell them at a different price, the deal is off, and I won't supply you anymore. Herka nodded, once again astonished by how meticulous Elodie was. Elodie held out her hand, and Herka shook it. His hand was astonishingly large, and his overly enthusiastic handshake nearly crushed her wrist. Will you come personally to test it again next time? Next time I'll bring my younger brother. You know, we run this merchant guild together. As you wish, he said. Don't hold her hand. Kabir looked a little upset. Kabir, it's just a handshake. Then I'll take my leave. Thank you both for your hospitality today, Herka said as he hurried off. It was a pleasure doing business with you, Elodie said with a smile. After Herka left the estate, Elodie was overjoyed. She was so excited she almost felt lightheaded. She bounced up and down, rubbing her hands together. Hooray, she cheered. In fact, the price she had set was much higher than she had originally expected, and she had never thought he would agree. She was delighted that all her efforts had finally paid off. Kabir, you don't need to worry about anything. I'll make you rich, Elodie said happily, pulling him into her arms and kissing his forehead. Unlike Elodie's excitement, Kabir wanted nothing more than to have Elodie by his side. Trees raced past them, and dust billowed behind. Madam, you're very talented, Sora said. At that moment, Elodie was learning how to ride a horse from Sora. Elodie had started learning because of Kabir. Kabir had great talent in swordsmanship, but he was afraid of horses. Elodie was worried and thought, why don't I teach him myself? So in order to teach Kabir how to ride, Elodie practiced every day. She could not teach him swordsmanship, but at least she wanted to do her best for him in this matter. Kabir, do you want to ride with me? Elodie asked, looking at him. Kabir frowned and shook his head uneasily. Then next time, Elodie let out a soft laugh. Sora and Rain smiled at the two of them as well. Suddenly, Elodie saw a butler hurrying over from the distance. At first his voice was faint, but as he came closer, it became clearer and clearer. Count Brolone has arrived. Count Brolone, the one who hated Kabir, his worthless uncle. It was him, wasn't it? When Norman had desperately searched for Kabir, the illegitimate son of the former duke, it was because he did not want the duchy to fall into Count Brolone's hands. The count was a fool, coarse in manner, addicted to drinking, womanizing, gambling, and drugs, and extremely arrogant, convinced of his own noble superiority. If he inherited the ducal title, the territory would fall into decline. Kabir's grandfather had also insisted that the count must never inherit the land. Norman considered the count a nightmare. Elodie told Kabir that his uncle had come to see him and that they needed to go greet him. Kabir looked puzzled, so Elodie explained that he was his father's younger brother. Kabir tried hard to remember the father he had only ever seen in portraits. He had feather black hair and pink eyes, much like Kabir himself. Elodie took Kabir's hand and headed toward the estate with Norman. Norman was worried the Count might harm them. On his way to the capital, Count Brolone had decided to stop by the Serenoa ducal estate. After entering the drawing room, Count Brolone clicked his tongue and remarked that the estate was a mess. Years ago, when he heard of his elder brother's death, he had once shouted with joy. He had thought the duchy would become his, and he had been full of hope that he would obtain the ducal title, becoming a powerful noble no longer ignored by others. Yet Kabir, the son of the Duke of Serenoa, had suddenly appeared and taken the inheritance from him. The Count was stunned by this nephew who had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. He was unwilling to let the son of a maid become the heir, so he repeatedly protested to the emperor, but his request was rejected. The emperor did not want a count who already held power to gain an even larger territory and upset the balance among the noble factions. Moreover, only members of the Serenoa family had the right to inherit. While the emperor was troubled by the issue, Norman submitted documents proving Kabir's existence, and the emperor immediately approved him as heir to the duke. None of the other nobles objected either. They believed an illegitimate child was still better for the territory. This made the count see Kabir as a thorn in his side. Soon, Elodie and Kabir entered. He glared at them in disgust, thinking they had taken what was rightfully his, and wanted to use this chance to vent his anger. Elodie bowed and greeted him. The count snorted angrily and stared at Kabir, who was hiding behind her, spitting out crude words. Elodie remained calm and smiled, signaling Kabir to greet him. After Kabir did so, the count still said it was ridiculous. He glared fiercely at the two of them. Elodie and Kabir sat down. A maid served tea and snacks. Elodie asked the count the reason for his visit. The count rudely replied that this was his home and he could come whenever he wanted. Elodie calmly sipped her tea while Kabir continued eating his sweets. The Count's features resembled those of the former Duke, but he was short and fat. He had intended to scold the children and frighten them, but instead found them perfectly composed. So he declared that although the Emperor had recognized Kabir, he would never hand the territory over to them. Elodie and Kabir continued to ignore him. The Count accused them of being disrespectful. Elodie pointed out that Kabir's title had been granted by the Emperor. The Count roared in anger and proposed that beginning next year, they hand over part of the taxes to him, saying he would act on their behalf in dealing with the nobles. Elodie and Kabir asked why they should do that. The Count became furious. Elodie said that if he insisted, then they could write to the palace and ask the Emperor to discuss it. The Count bit his lip. He had already lodged protests before, and causing another scene would damage his reputation. He was heading to the capital to regain the Emperor's trust and win back the nobles who had abandoned him. Elodie even suggested he take that proposal with him. The Count cursed and angrily leapt from his seat, grabbing Elodie by the collar. Kabir shouted, "Don't touch Madam! How dare you! Don't bully Madam!" Kabir shouted in anger, "You filthy bastard! How dare you!" The Count grew even angrier and prepared to strike Kabir. Elodie blocked his hand and stated her position. "Your status as acting Lord Enzir, as the Duchess of Serenoa and mistress of this land, I formally expel you." "Expel me?" The Count could not believe it. Elodie called for Norman and coldly ordered him to escort the Count to the capital. "You have threatened the young lord. I have no choice. Count Brolone has urgent business and must leave immediately. Please show him out." The Count glared at Elodie. Elodie said that if he did not leave, she would have the knights drag him out. Though seething with hatred, the Count still needed to see the Emperor, so he left the drawing room while vowing to get revenge later. "Move aside. The moment I saw that face, I should have turned around and left. This is how you treat me? I'll make you pay for this insolence." The Count shoved Norman aside and stormed away in fury. A few days later, Elodie and Kabir went to inspect the territory. Norman, Mary, and a knight accompanied them for safety. This time they went to look at the vast farmland near the estate. At the outer edges lived the vassals, yet she had never once seen them. After Kabir had been named heir, the vassals had neither visited nor even written. Elodie felt they were just like Kabir's uncle, unwilling to acknowledge him because of his age and his mother's background. She believed they did not deserve to be vassals at all, and had likely already thrown in their lot with other nobles. In the novel, the vassals only offered congratulations after Kabir returned from the battlefield. There was even a scene where the princess entertained the vassals, only for them to plot against him in secret. And in the original story, the mastermind behind it all had once been Elodie, the villainess. Even though her life was different now, she still felt sorry for Kabir. Even if only out of courtesy, they should at least have come to say hello, even if it were just a formality. They had not even sent a single letter. Those shameless people. Elodie was furious. An illegitimate child had suddenly appeared and been named the heir, so it was no wonder they refused to accept him. Of course, maybe they thought he had only gotten the position through connections or something of that sort. Even so, Elodie thought the least those people could have done was show their faces out of courtesy. There had not even been a single letter, much less a personal visit. What a pack of arrogant bastards. In the novel, they did not start acting friendly until Kabir had achieved great military merit and returned from war. There was a scene where the princess had them gathered somewhere, and in the original story, Elodie had schemed alongside those retainers. She could not help but reflect on it. Her life had already become different from the original story. Even so, she still felt a little sad. "It's beautiful, isn't it, Kabir?" Elodie said. "Yes," Kabir replied. Elodie looked at the scenery outside the carriage and said how beautiful it was. The estate sat at the center of the land. Straight out from the main gate was a great square with a fountain. The roads of the duchy had been built during Kabir's grandfather's rule. Following the road away from the main route, one could see old barns, orchards, farmland, and private homes. Elodie told Kabir to look carefully and said that this was his territory. The people of the land were all his subjects. He had to make sure they did not fall into poverty. As their lord, he had the duty to protect them. Kabir was confused at first, but after hearing her explanation, he nodded. After they arrived, Elodie got out of the carriage and decided to ride around with Kabir to look around. She handled the horse skillfully and felt proud of the results of her hard work. Kabir had not ridden in a long time and was a little afraid, but he was not as nervous as he had imagined. He enjoyed the horse's rising motion, the spring breeze, and Elodie's warmth. "We're going to ride around and take a look. Kabir, if riding gets too tiring for you, make sure you tell me, all right?" Elodie spoke to Kabir with concern. "All right," he said. "Kabir, look carefully. This is your land. You may not yet understand what that means. It means this territory is under your rule. Every person living here is under your protection. Your duty is to make sure they live in prosperity and do not go hungry or cold, Elodie continued. Long ago, this land was conquered in war by the first Duke. He was a hero of the battlefield and one of your distant ancestors. You must inherit that mission and protect them. The four-field rotation system used turnips and clover as fertilizer. Crop rotation could restore nutrients to the soil. Though the Norfolk four-field rotation had once been an advanced method before such knowledge became widespread, the three-field system was still commonly used. Elodie believed that if they wanted to increase production, they needed to change their farming methods. Planting clover would allow the soil to recover without leaving fields fallow, while also increasing crop and livestock output. In winter, livestock were usually slaughtered in large numbers due to food shortages. Cold-resistant turnips were useful crops and could also be fed to cattle and sheep. In short, growing clover and turnips would let more livestock survive the winter and produce more milk, cheese, meat, and manure. Elodie was glad that modern knowledge could be useful here. She believed stagnant farming methods persisted because nobles simply did not care about the lives of peasants. She swore that Kabir would become a good lord who cared for his people. "Madam, what are you thinking about so intently?" someone beside her asked. It was Norman. "How exactly is crop cultivation managed here?" Elodie asked. "We divide the land into 3 parts, rotating wheat and barley, and leave the third field fallow, correct? You leave the land fallow to restore the soil's nutrients, right?" "Yes, that's the reason. But why do you ask, madam? Why don't they plant turnips or clover? Shouldn't that help replenish the soil's nutrients? Is it because their farming methods have never improved? They simply never put any effort into researching better techniques. That's because the nobles never cared about the lives of farmers at all. You will become a great lord, unlike those other nobles. I will make sure of it," Elodie said firmly. After the new farming methods using clover and field peas were introduced, several months passed. Just as expected, crop yields began to rise from the very next harvest onward. The farmers' lives also started to stabilize. Naturally, that meant tax revenue increased as well, and people began returning to the territory. After several seasons passed like this, there was exactly 1 year left before Kabir would receive the emperor's order. Anna rushed into Elodie's laboratory beside the greenhouse and excitedly told her that she had found a new plant. At the time, Elodie's long hair was tied back in a ponytail as she busied herself with her latest research. Anna showed her the plant. The plant Anna had brought was very unusual. Even Elodie, who knew many plants, did not recognize it. Most of the time, she did not know them either, but because of her experiences in her previous life, there were some plants she could identify. That made her grateful she could make use of modern knowledge. Elodie decided to deal with it later. She rubbed her aching neck, exhausted from focusing on research for days. Besides painkillers, she was also researching many other medicines. Because Kabir would soon be heading to the battlefield, she had developed wound medicine as well. Although such medicine already existed, hers worked faster than what was available on the market. Elodie asked whether Kabir was still training. When she learned that he was still training with the knights, she told Anna to wait until he returned before arranging dinner. She recalled 3 years earlier. "Madam, I'm going to start training alone with Brian now," Kabir had said, "so you don't have to come watch anymore." Elodie had felt a little disappointed. "I see. Then I'll watch one last time today and won't come again." "What's wrong? Did I do something wrong? Am I getting in your way?" The memory flashed past. "It's fine. Thinking back on it, the first time Kabir used aura, I was completely dazzled. He was so adorable then," Elodie murmured. "How did he grow up so fast? He isn't even afraid of Brian anymore." Is this what parents feel when they send their child to school for the first time? Elodie sighed. She drank tea while waiting for Kabir to finish training. In the meantime, she read the current affairs newsletter Mary had brought back. When she saw an article saying the church was about to enter the war, her expression immediately grew grave. So the church was finally preparing to go to war. The Heklos Empire was the greatest empire on the Frill continent. Kabir would be participating in the war against the Eastern Ulta Empire. After annexing the smaller eastern kingdoms, the Ulta Empire had invaded the continent. They were barbarians who hunted humans. They despised the Tizel faith, followed by most of the people of the Frill continent. During the war, they slaughtered priests and mages, proclaiming their emperor the only true god and killing mages as offerings. And the war Kabir was about to be sent to was precisely this war against the kingdom of Ulta. She stared at the newspaper and thought, "Madam, why do you look so serious? It's nothing. More priests must have been kidnapped again. When will those barbarians stop this madness? Honestly, But no matter how savage the Ulta Kingdom's actions were, if the Empire and the Grand Temple had cooperated properly, Kabir would not have to be dragged onto the battlefield at such a young age. Though the Empire and the Grand Temple appeared to be allies on the surface, in reality their relationship was far from harmonious. The Emperor had decided to go to war with Ulta because Ulta had even begun eyeing the borders of the Western continent. But the Grand Temple disliked taking orders from the Empire and had always opposed the war. However, as the Ulta people continued killing more and more mages and priests, the Imperial Court and the Grand Temple finally joined hands. And now the story had reached this point. The Empire and the Grand Temple had formed a wartime alliance. But once the war officially began, internal conflict erupted again because of the political struggle between the Imperial Court and the Grand Temple. In the midst of this chaotic and unstable alliance, Kabir led the army to victory. "How pitiful humans are," Elodie said with a sigh. "Madam," after finishing training and bathing, Kabir came to the dining table dressed in semi-formal clothes. After asking about his training, Elodie ate with him. When she saw Kabir pushing away the carrots, Elodie gently reminded him to eat his vegetables. Kabir reluctantly ate them. At that moment, thinking of how little time she had left with him, Elodie felt immense pressure inside. At first, she had only wanted to raise Kabir, but as she spent time with him, she grew deeply attached. Realizing their separation was drawing near, she could only force a smile, afraid that if it vanished, tears would start pouring out. "This is far too inefficient. I really want to gather all the books in one place and read them." After the former Duke's death, the books in his study had been kept in perfect condition, and the room was cleaned regularly. It seemed that cleaning every study in the estate was a tradition passed down through generations. In one of those studies, Elodie found a special book that piqued her interest. It was a record of the history of the first Duke of Serenoa. From it, Elodie learned quite a few things about that Duke. He possessed extraordinary power. What could it have been? It was said that the first Duke had used an ancient sacred artifact to wield special abilities. Of course, this artifact had been passed down as a family heirloom from generation to generation. She had not yet discovered what the artifact actually was, so Elodie deliberately examined every old portrait. Only then did she realize the artifact was actually a red brooch. In the portraits, the first Duke wore it pinned to his chest. But the former Duke had been so incompetent that perhaps he had sold the brooch. That complete scoundrel. Still, let's look for it. Maybe I can find it. There's no hidden mechanism here. Maybe over there. Elodie stood up and walked toward the place where she had found treasure before. No way. Last time, I also found those gold coins under a desk. Just in case. It really is here. I need to check whether every desk in every study has a wooden panel underneath it. At that moment, there was indeed a wooden door in front of her, similar to the last one. Does that mean all I need to do is check under every desk in the studies? Could this be heaven's blessing? It seemed the dukes of the past had thought it very safe to hide valuables beneath their desks. It made sense. After all, they sat at their desks all day. Elodie gave a soft laugh and fetched a long iron rod. She was much better at prying open wooden doors than before. But to her disappointment, all she dug out was a box. When she opened it, there were only a few old pieces of jewelry inside. I thought it would be another secret chamber. However, among those old jewels was a brooch that looked very similar to the one in the portraits. What is this? Could it be fake? She thought in disbelief. In the book recording the history of the Duke of Serenoa, the artifact had been described as a brooch that emitted a vivid red glow. But the brooch before her was nothing like that. Not only was it damaged, its color was a dull, lifeless dark red. What a pity. Elodie let out a disappointed sigh. Suddenly, something astonishing happened. Detected a fading life. Use unidentified item? Elodie stared wide-eyed at the text box that had suddenly appeared. It was exactly the same window she had seen before her death in her previous life. Seeing it again after so long, she nearly cried out. Suddenly, something astonishing happened. Detected a fading life. Use unidentified item? Elodie stared with wide eyes at the suddenly appeared text box. It was exactly the same as the window she had seen before dying in her previous life. After so long, seeing it again nearly made her shout. Unidentified item. I feel like I've seen that term somewhere before. If no choice is made, the item will be used automatically. She hesitated, her heart pounding. But what of it? I didn't even know this thing existed before. So Elodie tremblingly pressed the yes button. Unidentified item, Phoenix Feather, has been used. A moment later, the brooch began to shine with a dazzling light. Startled, she stepped back. The brilliance stung her eyes, and she shut them instinctively. Then she opened them and slowly turned her head. Elodie gasped in amazement. The gem emitted a bright red glow, bathing the room in a soft radiance. The once dull and rusted metal now looked brand new and gleaming. The brooch she had thought was fake now looked exactly like the one in the portraits, just as described in the history book of the Duke of Serenoa. The gem radiated a vivid color, as if hot blood flowed within the light itself. Its beauty was breathtaking, and Elodie could not tear her eyes away. Thinking that this ancient artifact could accompany Kabir onto the battlefield and protect him, Elodie's worries eased a little. From that day on, she prepared even more actively, throwing herself into it wholeheartedly, like someone caring for a child about to go on his very first outing. As time passed, Kabir gradually grew up. Lately, Elodie had often been saying things that made him uneasy. She told Kabir that if the Empire ever faced a crisis, he had to step forward and protect the people. She also told him that he had the ability to handle anything and that he should fear nothing. He was no longer as afraid of adults as he once had been, because Elodie had always stayed by his side. She gave him strength and courage, making him feel he feared nothing. Elodie believed that even if he had to face things alone, he would be able to handle every situation. Kabir lay awake with his eyes open, unable to sleep. Why does it sound as if we're going to be separated? Is she planning to leave me behind? I'm so scared. That couldn't be true. A year later, Elodie was 19, and Kabir had finally turned 13. It had been an ordinary peaceful day until a royal messenger arrived at the Serenoa estate bearing an imperial order breaking the calm. Our nation is under attack from Eastern invaders. By decree of His Majesty the Emperor, the Duke of Serenoa must join the war. The Duke shall lead his knights and, under the blessing of Tfaikra, god of nature, join the Heklo's empire's war. The once lively ducal residence was now shrouded in gloom. The butler and the other servants did not know how to comfort anyone and could only watch Kabir's dejected state with heavy hearts. Elodie sat before the warm fireplace, looking at Kabir's downcast face. Kabir stared at the decree over and over, thinking, "Elodie, I don't want to leave, madam." He said in pain, "Do I really have to go? I don't want to." Kabir was restless, his eyes filled with fear and despair. Seeing tears gathering in his eyes, Elodie's heart ached unbearably. Then she pulled Kabir in her arms and gently patted his back. Kabir began to cry in her embrace. He was still only a child, yet he had to go to such a dangerous place. "I don't want to go," he sobbed. "I am scared. Don't send me away." "Don't be afraid, Kabir." "But I'm afraid of being separated from you," he cried. Elodie held him tightly, tears welling in her own eyes. She felt exactly the same. She did not want him to leave either. He had to part from the only person he cared about, the only one who made him feel happy. That pain was like his heart being bent in two. However, ever since the first Duke began ruling this land, there had been a rule that the Duke must go to war. Kabir had no choice but to fulfill his duty as Lord. "Kabir, I'll stay here and wait for you to come back." "I'll keep waiting for you," she said through tears. Elodie slowly explained the situation to Kabir, doing her best to comfort him. Cruel though it sounded, defending the empire in war was the Duke's duty. She had already explained all of this before, and Kabir understood it. But understanding did nothing to heal his wounded heart. Elodie's heart was just as shattered. If she could, she truly wanted to go in Kabir's place. Preparations began swiftly. Most of the knights had to go to war. The commoners did as well. The emperor had ordered that every household must send at least one man to join the royal army against the eastern invaders. Suppressing the grief in her heart, Elodie gently comforted Kabir, telling him that she would remain here waiting for his return and that he absolutely had to come back safely. Kabir did his best to control his emotions. Though his heart was full of fear and reluctance, he remembered that he must not show weakness in front of everyone. Elodie took out the restored brooch and solemnly handed it to Kabir. She told him that this brooch would keep him safe and warned him never to get hurt or fall ill. Kabir accepted the brooch and nodded. Elodie also told Kabir that she would write to him and that he must be careful on the battlefield. Kabir made Elodie promise that she would write often. As she spoke, Elodie slipped a letter into the pocket of Kabir's coat. If he cried at that moment, no one could have blamed him. After all, this was their final farewell before he headed to war. But the way he endured his sorrow was admirable. He seemed to remember that he could not show weakness in front of the knights and soldiers. At the end, Elodie entrusted Kabir to Brian. Brian assured her that he would take good care of Kabir in the war as quickly as possible and bring him back safely. Elodie knew very well that this war would likely last a long time. Just reaching the battlefield in the Khatan Mountains would take many days, and the kingdom of Ulta was a formidable opponent. But she believed that after going through this war, Kabir would grow into a duke respected by all. For the sake of giving Kabir that future, Elodie was willing to give everything, even leave this ducal residence without regret. She looked forward to the day Kabir returned and lived a happy life with the true heroine, the princess. A few months later, the cold winter ended and spring arrived. Ever since the Lord left, Madame had thrown herself wholeheartedly into the research of magical medicine, as if she wanted to drive away her longing through busyness. Everyone in the estate felt sorry for her, but all we could do is stay by her side. At least this war is being fought in alliance with the church, which is a relief. Priests and holy knights possess healing powers, so even if Kabir is injured, they can use magic to treat him. That said, it was also fortunate that we managed to find wild ginseng. I should also send Kabir more of those red pills. The pills made from ginseng will also be sold by Herka through the Lundia Trading Company. But for now, I need to make more good medicine. Not only will that help Kabir, it will also help the people of the territory. And I should start further developing the land as well, Elodie thought. This is the territory status report you requested. Is there anything noteworthy? Compared to before, the population has increased significantly. Because of that, the territory has become lively everywhere. But there's still some places in bad condition. We still have a long way to go. Kabir used to live in an orphanage in the slums. Right? Elodie looked at the report in her hand. Yes, madam. It was near Baron Brian's territory. Elodie thought for a moment. Sorry, I was wrong. Sorry. Kabir used to have nightmares every night about the orphanage. Baron Brian is one of the Duke's vassals. I believe he went off to war together with Kabir. That's right. Why do you ask? Norman was preparing to go out. So it's finally time. They dared remain in this territory even after abusing Kabir. Because of Baron Brian, I kept silent all this time. But today, madam, please accept this. Thank you. A bouquet. Madam, look at this. I thought you would like it, so I brought it. I wonder what Kabir is doing now. Looking at the bouquet, Elodie fell into thought. She remembered that Kabir had once given her a bouquet of flowers like this as well, wearing a radiant smile. I wonder what Kabir is doing now. Elodie changed into traveling clothes. She headed to that orphanage and looked at the shabby building. This place has been completely neglected. How could they leave children in a place like this? Perhaps, Elodie thought, are you here to adopt a child? Yes, I like to see the children first. A noblewoman from a wealthy family had come all the way to the slums to adopt a child. Well, that's none of my business. This way, please. What is this? This place is even worse than when they came to fetch the young lord. Why are all the children so thin? This is the slums. If the children were chubby, that would be the strange part. Call the director here, Elodie said. Such impatience. Please wait here a moment. Thank you for coming all the way to our orphanage. The children were all skin and bones, yet the director was dressed in luxurious clothes. Are you looking for a specific child? A boy or a girl? The director asked with a smile. About 6 years ago, there was a boy with black hair and pink eyes. He must have been very small and thin back then. Do you remember him? We have many children like that here. I'm not quite sure. You mean you abused so many children and locked them in rooms until you can't even tell them apart anymore? Madam, I don't know what you've heard, but perhaps you've confused us with some other orphanage. I'm certain it was here. And after seeing this, you still want to deny it? Once you've seen this sketch, you won't be able to refuse it anymore. After seeing this, you still won't admit it? Surely you can't deny it after looking at this sketch. Madam, you must be joking. The director and the worker looked at the abstract drawing with surprise on their faces. Do I look like I'm joking? It was you. You, what is it? It was you, wasn't it? The one who used to beat Kabir regularly. I have no idea who you're talking about, the worker said. The person you abused like that is now the lord of this territory. What? How could that be? Madam, they've arrived. What do you think you're doing? Who do you think you are, daring to lay hands on me? The director shouted arrogantly. Who am I? Elodie smiled. I'm the acting lord. Take them away. That's impossible. This can't be real. I was only following the director's orders, and so they were taken away. Madam, what shall we do with these children? Let's build a new orphanage. Move all the children there. Thank you for accompanying me, Sir Sarayon. Elodie said, You're welcome, madam. It is my duty. Norman, from now on, there must be no more slums in our territory. Before Kabir returns, I will take responsibility for developing this land. Norman's eyes brimmed with tears. Of course, I'm doing this for Kabir too. But I also need to make this territory stable and prepare for my life after the divorce. I think Norman may have misunderstood me. I feel a little guilty. I really do like this land. So even after the divorce, I do not want to go too far away. No matter what, I finally got my revenge. Kabir, you're happy too, right? She thought. Elsewhere, Kabir was reading a letter. Kabir, don't get hurt. Don't get sick. I will always be with you. I love you. From Madame Elodie. Kabir felt like crying. No matter how afraid I am, no matter how much I miss Madame, I absolutely cannot show weakness. I have to become strong, just as Madame said. At that moment, Kabir was struggling bitterly on the battlefield. It had taken a very long time just to pass through the capital and reach the Khatan Mountains. Now, they had finally arrived at the point where they had to cross the dark forest, the final barrier before the mountain range. The dark forest was called that because it was pitch black at night. Bare branches thrust into the sky, and the leaves blocked out all sunlight. Even the knights were frightened by the eerie atmosphere. Because monsters frequently attack there, the dark forest, like the nearby death forest, had been designated a forbidden zone. Everyone, be careful. The knights drew their swords, and a small battle broke out. Brian stayed at Kabir's side, protecting him from harm. The knights fought back against the monsters. This was the first time I've ever seen a monster. Kabir stared at the creature. It was something he had never seen before in his life. The monster that had appeared before them was a goblin, known for its greed and ferocity. I'm so scared. Kabir had only heard of goblins in books. They were mysterious creatures with hideous appearances. Out of fear, Kabir shrank behind the knights. His trembling hands gripped his sword tightly, and his mind went completely blank. He could not remember any of the swordsmanship tips Brian had taught him. "Get back!" Brian shouted as he continued cutting down the goblins before him. Suddenly, one goblin lunged straight at Kabir. "Watch out!" Brian was about to run over to save the boy, but he quickly stopped. The scene before him left him stunned, his eyes wide open. Kabir did not hide behind Brian. Instead, he stood where he was and raised his sword. The blade flashed as he slashed down at the goblin's head. When the sword came down, it split the creature apart. A short while later, the battle ended. Only a few soldiers had suffered minor injuries, so they were able to pass safely through the forest. Brian asked worriedly, "Are you all right, Your Grace?" Kabir tried to answer, "I'm fine." But he was not fine at all. He felt sick and miserable. He only wanted to cry. It was just a small wound, but seeing his own blood still terrified him. The last time he had seen blood had been back at the orphanage. As soon as they left the forest, they headed straight for camp. Kabir drew his sword and copied Brian, wiping the blade clean. The blood-smeared sword looked disgusting. Kabir turned his head away, his stomach churning. His nostrils were filled with the foul metallic smell of goblin blood. Brian took something from his pocket and handed it to Kabir together with a cup of water. "This is the painkiller the Duchess gave me. Before I examine your wound, please take the medicine first. But if it hurts too much, we can call a priest." "It's fine. This medicine will do," Kabir answered politely. He took the pill from Brian's hand and swallowed it with water. This medicine was made by Elodie. I miss my wife. If she knew he had been hurt, she would definitely worry terribly and gently tend to his wound. Perhaps because he had taken medicine made by her. His longing for Elodie grew even stronger. Seeing how maturely Kabir handled the situation, Brian was deeply surprised. His ability to deal with something like this was far better than expected. He really will become an outstanding man. Whenever the Duchess said, "My darling will grow into an excellent person," Brian would snort inwardly. But in a way, her words now seemed to be true. Watching Kabir use the swordsmanship he had taught him, Brian felt very proud. He felt he had done a good job raising his disciple. His Majesty the Emperor has gone too far, sending such a small child to serve as commander of the knights. Isn't that practically sending him to his death? In the end, it's nothing more than handing power over to Count Brolone. I even heard that the Emperor and Count Brolone reached some sort of agreement, the knights murmured. "Kabir Sernoa." It was a voice calling his name. At first he thought someone had whispered into his ear, but Brian, Sora, and Rain, who were beside him, had not been close enough to speak to him that way. "Kabir Sernoa. Kabir Sernoa." After calling his name, the voice's meaning was so faint it was hard to describe. "Kabir Sernoa, do you wish to possess even greater power?" Kabir opened his eyes. What was that voice? His Majesty the Emperor has gone too far, sending such a small child to command the knights. Isn't that the same as sending him to his death? In the end, he just wants to hand this land over to Count Brolone. They were still whispering among themselves. "I want to go back to my wife right now." "Kabir, never lower your head. You are the proud master of this land. Please rest for now. If this continues, you'll exhaust yourself. Please don't be so impatient. My lord, you are still young. In a few years, you will surely become an even stronger knight." Betos had never once seen Kabir rest. How could someone keep training for so long without even taking a single break? It was truly unbelievable. "I am too weak. I want to become strong." I want to become strong enough to protect everyone, Kabir thought. Serno O'Brien, did you call me? No, I did not call you. But you definitely heard what I just said, right? Did I mishear it? Never mind. That night, Kabir had already gone to sleep. My lord, do you know this? There are rumors that ghosts have appeared on the battlefield. Do not try to scare him. Sorry, but those rumors really do exist. Could the voice I heard earlier have been? That is just a baseless rumor. I want to become a strong knight, one who fears neither ghosts nor strange voices. Kabir tried to drive away his fear. Kabir, do you desire power? Sernoa. Kabir instantly shook off his drowsiness and sat upright. He realized where the voice was coming from. It was coming from the brooch. Heir who bears the name of Sernoa. If you can hear my voice, answer me. I shall grant you unmatched power. Who are you? So you can finally hear my voice. Where is the pink-haired woman who restored my vitality? Pink-haired? Do you mean my wife? Wife. That is what you call her? She looks very young. Still, no matter. She saved me when I was on the verge of disappearing. But why do you have this brooch? My wife gave it to me. She did not even know who I was and still gave me away so casually. But it seems you really are the legitimate heir. What exactly are you talking about? Long ago, I chose the first Serenoa. Out of pity, I share my power with the one who made a contract with me. Now, do you want to form a contract with me as well? Do you not desire power? I do desire power. Then do it now. But my wife said I should not trust strangers so easily. I'm going to sleep now, so do not bother me. What? I'm telling you I can give you great power. Are you really not going to make a contract? No. Why not? You just said you wanted to become stronger. Really? You truly will not do it? I said no. How dare you ignore my greatness and superiority? Chatter, chatter, chatter. So noisy. Kabir got angry. From that day on, the brooch kept talking to him nonstop. Kabir Sernoa, I'm telling you to make a contract with me. If you do, you will become stronger. Why will you not do it? Why is he so angry? I do not even know what will happen after making a contract. The bloodline of House Sernoa possesses the power to control natural magic. If you cultivate that power and give it to me, you want me to develop my power and hand it over to you? Would that not mean I am the only one losing out? Kabir stated the obvious. If I become stronger, you will also become stronger. If you become a swordsmanship master, I will gain enough power to break the seal, regain a human body, and use all my strength. I will become your reliable ally. Well, tempting is it not? Are you not curious about who I am? Not curious about my name? Hurry and make a contract with me. No, I'm actually not that curious. You should have given in by now. Could it be he keeps refusing because of what his wife told him? You want to return to your wife as soon as possible, right? I do. I want to go back to my wife, even if it is only one day sooner. Then you had better make a contract with me, because once I break the seal, this war will end very quickly. Really? Of course. If you do not make a contract with me, you will be trapped here forever. Why would I lie to you? And even after I regain my human form, I will still bow to you. So, do you want to make a contract now? HM, can you put that in writing? You little brat, where did you learn that? My wife taught me, of course. Fine deal. We have finally made a contract. I am the Flame Spirit King, Ifrit. Now call my name. Kabir Sernoa. Ifrit, I form a contract with you. At that moment, the power gathered within the red gemstone burst into a brilliant flash. What appeared before Kabir's eyes was the Spirit King. At that moment, the power gathered within the red gemstone burst into a brilliant flash. What appeared before Kabir's eyes was, what have you turned into? It was a tiny red puppy. This is the body of the great flame spirit king Ifrit. He looked like a weak, helpless little puppy, tiny as a baby. There was a pair of little wings on his back. They were so thin that Kabir felt they might tear off if he tugged on them too hard. I feel like I have been tricked. That is only because I do not have enough energy right now. Once I absorb your magic power, I will become more and more majestic. He said that while wagging his tail. Can I really trust this? I miss my wife so much. After returning to the territory, Elodie sent the children to an orphanage managed by Patria. For years later, my lady, it is time to depart. Has it already been that long? Go on ahead to the carriage. I will be there shortly. My lady, take this, child. Little Daisy tugged on Elodie's skirt and handed her a bouquet of flowers. What beautiful flowers. Thank you. Elodie patted her on the head. Be good while I am away. Okay. Daisy nodded in agreement. As Elodie left the orphanage, she suddenly felt unwell. She could not even hold on to the flowers, and they fell to the ground. HM already. It was a disease that slowly turned the body to stone. In the original story, Elodie had once tried to poison the princess with a toxin that caused the same symptoms, and as retribution for her evil deeds. She eventually died from an incurable illness with the same effects as that poison. In the novel, the symptoms had only begun after Kabir returned, and she was cast out. Why? Why now? What if I die before Kabir comes back? What should I do? From that day on, I immediately began researching a cure for this disease. I had Herka buy every medicinal herb in the world. I also read and studied every book on plants that I could find. I tried hard to stay calm, thinking that I would find the cure soon. I will find it, no matter what it takes. Then I will welcome Kabir home with a smile. But the illness worsened. It had already been 2 years since the onset, and I still had not found a cure. My lady, your complexion does not look very good. Are you all right? I am fine. Thank you for your concern. Am I going to die like a Lodi in the original story? She looked down at her hand. Anna, what is this? This is the plant you mentioned before, the one you wanted to use for preliminary testing. It kept growing, so I collected it little by little. I remember seeing it while researching crimson ginseng. Now that I think about it, I have never actually tested this plant. Could you bring me everything you have collected of it? There is no record of it in the books, so perhaps we really might find a cure. First, I will try steeping it in green tea. I hope it works. Elodie looked at the tea brewed from it. Her reflection appeared in the teacup. She drank it all in one gulp. Let us see the effect. It still does not work. I had some hope for it. Wait, my fingers moved. I still feel a little numb, but there is obvious improvement. I found it. I found the medicine. Who would have thought it was right beside me all along? Then if I brew tea using these red leaves at a higher concentration, it might work even better. They're a little frighteningly red, but as long as they work, I have nothing to worry about. With that, she continued drinking it. But as she drank, the teacup suddenly crashed to the floor. I cannot breathe. Elodie looked painfully at the overturned teacup and then discovered that she had coughed up a mouthful of blood onto her hand. Why am I bleeding? Why is there blood? The poison test showed nothing abnormal. Could there be a toxin that cannot be detected? I can feel my fingers again. Just drinking the infusion already eased much of the numbness. After eating the leaves, the sensation in my fingers returned completely. But coughing up blood is worrying. Still, I have never seen such an effect before. Since it does not hurt, I only need to keep observing the symptoms, right? But if I cough up blood every time I drink the red leaf tea, everyone will definitely be alarmed. For now, I should keep this hidden. No matter what, I can finally sleep peacefully tonight. I will hide it here. No one will find it, right? In high spirits, Elodie went off to organize documents. It seems my lady is cheerful again, the maids whispered. Yes, what a relief. Anna, could you bring me the crops we planted earlier? Certainly, my lady. She had been very depressed for a while, and I was worried the whole time. I'm glad. She seems to be feeling much better. Anna, please take care of the cleaning again today. Yes, my lady. Anna cleaned the room by herself. Did my lady forget her handkerchief? Anna picked it up and looked at it. There was something stained on it. Anna froze for a moment. No way. This is my lady's blood. Meanwhile, it was night on the other side. If we make one wrong move, our entire army could be wiped out. That is right, my lord. You must make a more cautious decision. We have no more time to hesitate. Tomorrow night, we attack the Ulta Kingdom. This miserable war must end. Kabir issued the order. Why would someone usually so cold and rational suddenly act like this? My lord, this is too rash. Please reconsider. Surely you cannot mean this, my lord, the knights urged. Do you really believe what that woman said? Kabir turned to look at the woman, his gaze sharp. Just now, this war has lasted far longer than I expected. The Ulta Kingdom, with the mighty Heklo's empire of the Western continent as its ultimate target, conquered the strategically vital Daev Kingdom and began its advance. Realizing the severity of the situation, the imperial court and the Grand Temple decided to join forces. However, the emperor wanted to launch an immediate joint assault and crush the Ulta Kingdom in one stroke. But the Grand Temple insisted on retreating first and waiting for a better opportunity. The sturdy shields of Ulta warriors could only be pierced by divine power. That meant the Holy Knights had a charge at the front. But the Holy Knights, obeying the High Priest's orders, refused to go to the front lines, causing the war to fall into a stalemate. Because of those fools and their power struggle, I have to return to my wife as soon as possible. Just wait a little longer. I will end this war. End the war? Do you know how many times you have said that? How much longer am I supposed to wait? Kabir asked. I swear, just a little longer. Then eat more. Grow up faster. Kabir said, Hey, forcing magic power into me will not make me grow faster, so stop doing that. You have already waited all these years. Can you not wait just a few more days? Why are you so impatient this year? What is wrong with you? Have you heard? That poor fool's wife cheated on him. He may be arrogant, but that is still too miserable. I also heard another man's wife, after waiting for him in despair, killed herself. Sigh. Sometimes it seems better not to have a wife at all. At least those men are close enough to the capital to receive news, but nothing at all has come from the Serenoa territory. Yes, I wonder whether everything is all right there. She said she would write. But what if my wife has forgotten me? She has not sent a single letter all this time. What if she has married someone else? Is that what you're worried about? Or what if she is dead? You're practically writing a whole novel at this point. A full-length one. Get lost. Do not shout so loudly. He was rather cute when he was little, the Spirit King said. My wife. Kabir felt a little sad. The princess has escaped. Catch her. While he was missing his wife, a woman fell from the sky. She tumbled down in a wretched state and landed right on top of Kabir. I really am the princess of the Dayev kingdom. And the king of Ulta really is coming to Dayev castle tomorrow. He said he would come in person to take me. He said I would be offered to him, the woman said. The knights began murmuring among themselves. Betos asked, Princess, then how did you open the castle gate? Thanks to this bracelet. It is a keepsake from my mother. The people of Ulta do not know its power, so they are still searching for me in there. Oh, mother. She burst into tears. The knights were at a loss. They looked at one another. A decision was finally made. Betos. Yes, my lord. Tomorrow, you stay here and keep watch on that woman. What? If what she said is true and the king comes, then we will have to change the plan. Do you believe everything she just said? I am disappointed in you, Betos said. Sorry. If there is still no news by tomorrow night, kill her. The operation will proceed as originally planned.